Hello and welcome back to B&T TV. We are back at the sprawling Publicis offices here in Piermont. We're going to be chatting to the Saatchi Saatchi team, if you couldn't tell already. We've got the CEO, Patrick Rowe, for his first ever interview as the new boss, and some of his lovely team. Pat, you've been at Publicis for a little while now, it's fair to say, but you've only been in post at Saatchi Saatchi for 2 months. How have you seen Publicis change, and what changes do you want to make here?
I've been here a long time. I've seen the disappearance of bromides, loops, beta tapes, so some people watching might not even know what they are. Look, I have seen a lot. Once upon a time, Publicis, the agencies within Publicis were very independent and acted almost as competitors. What we've seen change recently is that we all work together. So very much, Publicis is very much a network of connected agencies all working and making use of everybody's skills, capabilities and expertise to work on any particular client.
At Saatchi Saatchi, kind of specifically, what changes do you want to make in your new job?
Well, similar to Publicis Group, it's all about connectivity. Saatchi Saatchi is very much famous for creative thinking, big creative thinking, and my goal is to make sure that creative thinking is more relevant to clients more often.
Greenwashing is kind of a hot button issue at the moment in the industry. Toyota's probably your biggest client, it's fair to say. How do you help them kind of keep their messaging on track when there's a lot more scrutiny over environmental claims?
Sure. Look, not specific to Toyota, but to all big clients that we work with, there's a lot of attention on sustainability and the environment, rightly so. It's an important topic to a lot of people. And companies are doing a lot to address that. And it's not easy, it's quite a complex challenge. And some of the things they're doing are relevant now, and some of the things they're doing are planned for the future. It's our job to help big brands and companies communicate that to people. And so that's our job, so that's what we do. Part of that, though, is to make sure we do that in a way that stands up to scrutiny, both from people and regulatory bodies, and that's a really important part of what we do. So trust that anything we're saying for any of our clients goes through a high degree of scrutiny internally before it becomes a campaign.
And could you just kind of illuminate what that sort of high level of scrutiny looks like a bit?
Well, internal research, we look at, it's similar to any claim for any product. You know, we make sure that we look at research, we look at proof points from clients. We investigate that from a strategic planning standpoint. You know, before we say anything, we need to make sure that everybody can stand behind it.
Attention is, another very big topic at the moment, and with so much stuff being online, shortening attention spans generally. And I can imagine what your answer is going to be, but does creativity actually still matter?
Oh, look, in a way, your question is the answer, right? That because you're absolutely right. You know, in a world of fragmented channels, new channels. You know, I watch my teenage daughters. When a TV ad comes on, they look straight down at their phones, right? So in that kind of world where there's so much distraction for people's attention, creativity matters more than ever. It's the single thing that can bring people together, get them talking, and really have an impact in market and sort of cut through that fragmentation and that clutter. So I really think that we're about to see renewed focus on big creativity. I think it's very important.
Brilliant. And I have to ask, although again, I can imagine what your answer is going to be. How annoyed do you get when people get Saatchi Saatchi confused with the other company that sounds similar?
What company is that? Look, I don't get annoyed at all. I think if anything, it's a testament to the enduring impact of Maurice and Charles Saatchi. You know, they've had a huge impact on our industry. They've not got one agency named after them; they've got two. Look, my view is we would both benefit from that name, and it's probably similar to how McDonald's and a KFC, when they set up next to each other, they both benefit from that. So I'm sure we both do benefit. So we're just proud to be sharing the Saatchi name, but we are the original, so we take solace in that. But and also Justin Graham used to work for us. I used to work for him within Publicis Group, so I'm sure we helped teach him everything he knows.
I'm sure we'll be very, very glad to hear you say that. Claire, you are a group account director here at Saatchi and Saatchi. How do you keep your clients happy and stop their eyes from wandering around when it comes to renewal time?
I think that if my focus was wandering eyes at renewal time, that would probably be problematic, and I'm not doing my job. But look, I think with anything to start out with, it's making sure that, your basics, your account management 101 is nutted down and you are delivering for your client on a day-to-day basis. But I think more importantly, and probably a large part of what I do and my job, is to spend enough time building the relationships with clients so that we do have a mutual level of trust and respect so that we can deliver what we need for them, I guess, in the most meaningful way possible. And it's not just, from a campaign perspective, it's from a day-to-day management perspective. It's also making sure that they feel comfortable enough to bring us any problems that they have and understand that we will solve them. I think another side of maintaining that level of relationship, I personally have catch-ups with each of my client leads at least once a month. It's just a one-on-one to understand what's going on in their world, what we can do to help. But at Saatchi and Saatchi, we also run, our formal review processes. So we'll do appraise either biannually or annually, and we also do our TRR survey. But so there shouldn't be at any point in time within our relationship with our clients that we don't know how they're feeling and we don't know how we can solve their problems.
There's a lot of people saying that kind of marketing budgets and client budgets are tightening as the recession looms.
Yeah.
Do you find that? And how do you drive results for your clients in that kind of context?
Look, I think, yes, some are shrinking, some aren't. I mean, it really depends on where a client is, I guess, in their brand building journey or what it is that they actually need to deliver for their individual brand and for their company. But yeah, look, budgets have been shrinking, but I think it's important to look at that from a contextual perspective. So yes, budgets are probably shrinking, or production budgets are probably shrinking, but then also look at how the media landscape has shifted significantly, over the last 5 years, but even over the last 12 months to 2 years. I mean, we didn't know what was going on with TikTok, 12 months, 2 years ago. So I think in that context, you can still deliver some really solid results on a lower production budget. And I think it's also important to consider that great ideas don't cost more than not so great ideas. But how we deliver within that context is insanely simple. We work really closely with our media partners. Those guys know more about these channels and the behaviours of our target markets and the people that we're trying to have one-on-one communications with. So we will always, from a strategic and a creative perspective, engage with our media teams as closely as we possibly can and really get them to help us to find the best way to deliver the most impactful content that we possibly can. So I think the closer you work with the people who are booking all of that media and telling you where it is that you need to communicate, the more impactful your work is actually going to be. Budget notwithstanding.
It must be pretty easy to work close together when they're literally across the road.
Downstairs, yeah, it is.
You obviously have a bunch of different people working on heaps of different accounts. How do you make sure that you're running a tight ship here?
Starting off with a boring answer, account management 101. Getting the basics right and making sure that we're delivering for our clients, as I said earlier, on every single brief, on everything they need on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of, we do that, we're pretty good. But I think more importantly, firstly, I have an amazing team, not just my immediate team, but also, our strategic team, our traffic management team, our production operations teams. Those guys ensure that whatever it is that we need to deliver for a client gets done, and I would not be able to do my job without those people. But I think within that, and to be able to build out a fully functional team, my true belief, and other people might be different, is that you can't lead from a perspective of, I know how everything should be done and this is how I want it done. We spend a lot of time in our team, and look, it was hard work in the beginning to ensure that we understand each other's strengths, the things that we're better at, and to make sure that we're open enough to suggestions to make things better. I mean, nobody wants to be the smartest person in the room. Nobody wants to walk into a room and go, I know how this needs to be done. And I'm extremely lucky in my immediate team and the wider Saatchi agency that there is a culture of asking everybody if we can do something better, if we can do it more efficiently, if there is another way, and if we all agree to it, to going ahead.
Adelaide, you are a strategic planner here. How do you manage to kind of craft creatives for all the different and emerging forms of media that we seem to be getting at the moment?
I think it's such a good question, and definitely very top of mind at Saatchi and Saatchi. I think we're always challenging the creative teams to think about how we can create a really compelling sort of, not even a campaign idea, but just a concept that can really stretch across different channels and media forms. And what we've been doing a lot recently in the kind of briefing process is challenging the teams to think, if this idea was to live entirely on Spotify, what does that look like? And we're finding that that's really interesting because then you have kind of an ecosystem of different executions that are really bespoke and fit for channel, united by a bit of an overarching sort of campaign idea. But it allows us to kind of tap into those behavioural insights and different buying mindsets that come with, audio formats. Obviously, you're very mobile, you're on the move, you're thinking completely differently to if you're, on Netflix or watching a YouTube video of where to go to on holiday next at home. So I think that's been a really kind of helpful step in the briefing process to kind of cater for the changing landscape.
And what sort of media is your favourite to work on, and what's your favourite campaign that you've done so far at Saatchi and Saatchi, excluding all the ones that we're not allowed to talk about on the wall behind us?
So many good ones coming. Really tricky to answer. I've worked on so many, from like NRMA to Vodafone to Nescafe, but I wanted to talk about a smaller campaign for a really cool gin distillery that we did about a year ago now, called Never Never. They're out of South Australia, and they came to us with a really interesting challenge, which was, hey, we've won all these amazing awards overseas, but no one in Australia really knows about us. How do we kind of become famous? How do we become the most recommended gin brand in the country? And we were like, whoa, huge challenge. We love it. We did a lot of research, and we found a really interesting truth strategically, which was that, no matter how amateur of a gin drinker you are to how sophisticated of a gin drinker you are, no one seemed to have perfected their perfect G&T. Everyone was still experimenting. They were still willing to try new brands. No one had really nailed it. So we thought, strategically that's really interesting because the brand was all about encouraging that experimentation. You had consumers that were really into that experimentation. So we came up with this idea of Let's Make Magic, which was an invitational kind of platform idea. And then off the back of that, lots of different creative ideas and territories. But that was a really fun one, also because we got to try some really delicious gin along the way.
And how do you make your gin and tonics?
I'm into Never Never now, so I go and I ask for it. So I'm one of those people, but I like a classic splash of lime or a splash of lemon, even cucumber, a bit of a game changer for something refreshing, and keep it simple with some tonic.
Lovely. And what's one thing about the kind of creative process that might surprise people? Obviously the Lego and the Nerf gun notwithstanding.
Great question again. I think the thing that comes to mind is, look, there's no template for anything that we do, no strategic template, no creative template. Every client has really different challenges. And I think one of the interesting things as well is that often you have like little nuggets of ideas that sometimes live in almost an extension hole of like a campaign development process. And sometimes those little ideas can become the big idea. So I think we're always learning never to neglect those like thought starter, interesting ideas and give them the room and the space to breathe. Because, as client challenges sort of change, as the kind of context changes, those ideas might be the ones that, make the biggest impact.
And you've never had to shoot anyone with a Nerf gun? Look, coming to a disagreement?
I use it as a threat alert. Have I actually done it? No. We'll see.
Danny, you're a digital production director here. That means you have to produce assets for lots of different types of media. How do you manage to wear so many different hats at once?
It can be hard, especially during peak periods when all of our clients want to get their projects out the door at the same time. And we have a number of clients with competing deadlines. Prioritization and communication is key. So I would say just constantly communicating with all the internal teams, making sure that everybody's across project status and where everything's up to, which helps the account service teams manage the client's expectations. Also using project management tools as much as possible to make your life easier.
What's your favourite one? Are you a Monday.com man?
I haven't used Monday, but I'd say Jira is probably one of my favourite ones. And we also use Trello for just keeping on top of day-to-day tasks and managing the team as well.
The digital media landscape is obviously changing quite a lot at the moment. There's, more short-form video platforms than ever. There's lots of, audio advertising chatter going on. How do you kind of manage to keep on top of everything when it changes so quickly?
We have very close relationships with a lot of our ad tech partners and publishers as well, so we stay very close to them. They help us keep on top of what is changing in the industry, any new and emerging technology. One of the big shifts that we've seen over the last 3 to 5 years is a push for personalised content, so moving away from the one-size-fits-all approach. So because of that, we're constantly looking for new technologies that we can onboard, which helps us deliver those sorts of projects for our clients.
Danny, when it comes to briefing, do you like a kind of a loose brief? You can interpret it how you want, or do you like to be pretty much told what to do with a really tight brief?
I think it depends on the type of the brief and the timeline as well. A tight brief usually comes with deliverables and objectives that are clearly defined from the outset, which makes it easier to manage expectations, both internally and with client. A more looser brief gives us more creative flexibility, but also opens us up to interpretation and ambiguity as well. So with that comes usually more rounds of amends, which takes more time to make sure the final output is right and everyone's happy with it. So I would say fast turnaround briefs or retail briefs, a tight brief is definitely preferable. If we've got a bit more time up our sleeves, then a loose brief definitely helps us think outside the box a little bit more.
And there was absolutely no pun intended with any of this loose and tight brief chat.